Just to give you an example of one of the tools, technical tools in this toolkit, if an MFI has decided that ethical staff behavior is the principle that they really want to work on, they've identified this as a priority area, then their change may be to create and implement a staff code of ethics or staff rule book. Well, the SMART campaign has a technical tool called How to Develop a Client Code of Ethics. This is something that a guide that an institution can use to go step by step in the development process of a code of ethics. So that's just one example of the technical tools that are available for MFIs on the SMART campaign website. And then, of course, as you change, we encourage you to track the change. This means a feedback loop within your own institution to evaluate how the institution is changing in terms of client protection and to communicate that with staff. We always encourage managers not only to implement a new program, but then to track the progress of that program so they know how to refine it, how to make changes and improve it. And then finally, there's two ways to report. One, we'd love for you to report to the SMART campaign. Let us know what you're doing in client protection, the progress that you're making. And then also you can report to the mixed market. The mixed market has a social performance standards report where MFIs can report on their social performance more broadly. And within that, there's a category for client protection. So you can report to mixed market on your client protection progress. So we encourage you to do that. I'm going to wrap up and turn things over to the other panelists. I appreciate your attention. And I just want to say that as MFIs, I know that anyone standing up here and telling you that you should prioritize something else and try something else, implement new things within your organization, that can be really overwhelming and it can be frustrating. But I would encourage you to make use of the resources that the SMART campaign is starting to gather from all over the industry in this global effort. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah. That was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we did learn the 6 principles of client protection, which I think that are concise and should be easy to remember. We learned how MFIs can put these into practice, talked about how management can use this information to actually make decisions based on the information collected on how well they're doing in terms of client protection, and the emphasis of implementing that at all levels within the organization, from the staff down to the cashier. And then, importantly, the takeaways we learned about tools that are available for you all, and the React, if you can think of that, is how you can engage in this. So next, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Matteo from Blue Orchard, who will give us an investor's perspective.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Kelly, for the introduction. I think it's not surprising to see an investor talking about client protection these days, but obviously before coming to Colombo, I was like, can I please talk about investments? Please, please, please. And they assigned me on this panel, and I'm very happy to be here because I think it's time also from investors to start talking about clients' protections and how we do implement those principles in our daily process. So the purpose of the presentation is to basically give you a point of view from an investor, so like Blue Orchard. My name is Matteo. I'm based in Phnom Penh in Cambodia. We just opened our first regional office for Blue Orchard in Asia. I'm in charge of the portfolio for Blue Orchard that goes from South Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and Mongolia. And today we are going to talk briefly about a few minutes about us, what we do, who we are, and later on about how we do implement those principles into our due diligence process. I guess most of you know, but for the people here that are not aware of who Blue Orchard is, we are an asset manager specialized in microfinance. We have been established in 2001. We do offer debt products, equity products, and advisory services. Our mission is to bridge the gap between capital markets on one side and microfinance institutions on the other side. We do raise money 100% from capital markets. So I would say 50-60% of our money comes from institutional investors, mainly in Europe, and 40% from private banking type of clients. All right, as of June, more or less, we manage a little bit over $1 billion of assets in microfinance. We work with, let me get this right, 120, it should be by now 140 MFIs in more than 40 countries. And we do consider ourselves having a very good track record because we've been established in 2001. We made loans and equity investments in more than 850 institutions. And so far, we haven't had any default, but actually this is changing. And this is going to make this is leading to an interesting point that I'll try to make later on, because we are experiencing some workouts in the history of microfinance. I think for the first time, few of the lenders, few of the MIVs, microfinance investment vehicles, are experiencing some workouts in some countries around the world due to macroeconomic crisis, over-indebtedness, mismanagement, frauds, and not very ethical staff collection procedures. So we're doing workouts. That's something new in the industry. And at the same time, we basically provide the various ranges of debt products like loans, CDOs, guarantees, equity as well. We have a variety of teams based in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, Geneva, Switzerland, New York, Phnom Penh, Lima, in Peru. This is just to give you a snapshot of where we work with our regional and headquarters and our portfolio. Most of it comes from Central America, South America. We work in Africa, we work in Middle East, Eastern Europe, we work in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Mongolia. In Asia, our current presence is mainly in Cambodia, where we have 9 outstanding clients. And then our biggest portfolio in terms of volume is obviously in India. We have clients in the Philippines, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Mongolia, and we are now closing the first few deals in Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Nepal. We're also looking at doing due diligence in Laos, Vietnam, China, and Thailand shortly. So, but what is Blue Orchard? Actually, what's our process? How do we assess the creditworthiness of an MFI, and how can we implement the client's protection principles into our daily work? Well, first of all, we have some eligibility criteria. So we do work with MFIs that have at least 2 or 3 years of operations, that have at least an asset size of $10 million, that have externally audited accounts. Ideally, they should have a rating, even better if they have also a social rating. Primary business should be microfinance. They should have good management, good governance practices, and they should be sustainable, or at least give us a clear picture on how and when they plan to reach OSS above 100%. Once there is a clear need and the process of qualification of new investments, it's done, we organize a due diligence on the ground with the MFI, spending a couple of days at their head office, meeting with the CEO, chairman of the board, CFO, operations, audit, HR, MIS, risk management, you name it. And we also spend quite some time on the ground visiting the MFI branch operations, speaking to their field officers, to their branch managers, and to their clients. If we are satisfied with this qualitative step, then we go back to our desk and we conduct a little bit more research in terms of country risk, analyzing the macroeconomic performance of the country, if there is any political risk, the industry side, supply, demand of the microfinance industry in that country, and basically we prepare what we call a credit committee proposal, which is a report for internal use to be discussed with our management once a week, and that leads to a credit decision that ultimately should lead to disbursement of a loan facility or an equity investment for that particular MFI. Throughout the process, there is a monitoring phase, which is quite important. We do visit our clients once a year, and in some countries like India, we actually go quite often, like 3-4 times a year. And throughout the process, we do collect monthly data from our MFIs and check on their performance, and we do keep in touch with the MFI, I would say, on a weekly, monthly basis. So Blue Orchard has been a signatory to the client protection principle since, I would say, inception, if I'm not mistaken. Now you know what those principles are, and now I can tell you that among those 6 principles, What we have found in a way easy to implement and keep an eye on are the first three. So we, as an investor, obviously, avoidance of over-indebtedness, it's quite a key topic for us. People, investors, stakeholders in the industry sometimes tend to think, well, over-indebtedness, it's responsibility of the MFI. They should definitely take action on avoiding the over-indebtedness. But it's also, I think, responsibility of the investors to make sure that MFIs and a particular market, particular region, a particular country is not over-indebted. If there is a bunch of investors that lend to the same institutions, then we do also have a responsibility in trying to avoid that. And I'll give you a practical example later on. Transparent pricing is something that we try to monitor and something that we basically trying to evaluate during our field visit. When we visit the MFI and we spend time with the loan officers and we see their clients, we certainly always ask questions about transparent pricing. We make sure that the clients do understand how much they get charged, if they know the effective rate, if they know the flat rate, if they're, as Leah was saying, if they're illiterate, we try to make sure that they know what they've signed. We check their passbooks, and I'll tell you later a couple of interesting examples on bad practices that we've seen and that have led to some positive changes. The third principle that we try to evaluate as far as we can, it's the appropriate collection practices. Again, this is done mainly on the field during our process, on the ground, during our due diligence, and we try to see if there is a good corporate culture between the MFI staff and the borrowers, and group of women, group of men. This is important for us and gives us a clear understanding and idea on if the staff from the MFI is basically having a cordial, friendly, nice relationship, and there is no sort of sense of fear or anxiety among the group, and everybody is kind of chilled out and friendly, and they can be open to each other. So this is quite important for us to see a very good corporate culture being passed from the MFI to the borrowers. What we find a little bit more challenging to evaluate and assess in our daily work, it's about ethical staff behavior. Reason being, we don't spend enough time on the ground with the MFI. So if the loan officer and the branch manager, they want to have a good impression on me, and they can definitely cheat me by being all good and smiley and friendly. So that for me is a little bit more difficult to evaluate. Mechanisms for redress of grievances. Then we've seen in few institutions in India, for example, and in Indonesia, hotline centers, help desk phone lines available for clients that they can call and they can complain. So those are very positive initiatives that we would encourage other MFIs to follow. Privacy of client data, this is again for us as an investor and being outside of that country, it's quite challenging again to make sure the data of the clients is used properly. All right, I think I promised you a few examples. Here I am. Again, so an important part of my job is spent on the ground. So we do make sure that we spend enough time with the loan officers of the MFI and branch managers. But at the same time, we spend a lot of time emphasizing with clients and with the MFI staff that clients do not get over-indebted. Clients do get a decent amount of money that they can repay, and we do usually ask and we check on our process how many outstanding loans they have, with how many MFIs, what's their disposable income, and we check the analysis of the cash flow analysis that usually the MFI conduct in their job. The second interesting, I think, responsibility that as an investor we have together with our colleagues is to make sure we do have an open, transparent, important dialogue with the regulatory authorities in the countries where we work, making sure that if we can play a role, facilitate the establishment of credit bureaus, and making sure that the National Association of the microfinance sector in a particular country is well aware of those issues, is well aware of smart campaign principle or client protection principles, and they push the process forward because we do want to work in healthy microfinance markets. Obviously, when we visit the clients, I'll be honest with you, I had several cases of clients that at the beginning when I asked in a group meeting of women how many have other loans outstanding with other MFIs, usually there is silence. And they say, no, nobody, of course. And then I try to rephrase the question. I'll try to get the help of the loan officer, obviously, to translate the question. And the answer is one hand gets raised, and then we ask for the third time in a row. Usually the district manager, the area manager, the branch manager comes in the game a little bit more rude in the sense of like a little bit more straightforward. And then you suddenly see 4, 5, 6 hands raising and say, okay, we do have outstanding loans with other MFIs. So I think it's important to make a distinction between being over-indebted and having multiple loans outstanding. If a client, if a borrower has the capacity to pay 3, 4 loans, fine. But if a client is not able to repay 3, 4 loans, then it becomes an issue for us, for the MFI, for the client itself. In India, I guess as many of you are aware, there's been a crisis a few years ago in 2006 in Andhra Pradesh. There's been a crisis about repayments. There's been a crisis about basically portfolio quality deterioration because of some political interference. And some statistics do mention these days that there is a growing over-indebtedness in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And this is why leading MFIs have now jointly agreed on having they've signed a sort of code of ethics, Leah, and in order to avoid over-indebting their own clients and making sure that each of the MFI has a maximum of 1 outstanding loan with 1 client, and making sure that that client has no more than 3 loans outstanding with other MFIs. So basically in Andhra Pradesh now there is a sort of jointly agreed code of ethics, making sure that clients do not borrow more than 3 times from other MFIs, and their disposable income make sure that they are basically in a position to repay. Got it. 2 minutes I have. All right, let's move. Restricting the aggregate payments as a proportion of net disposable income. This is something that we can check, obviously, but again, this is the job of a loan officer. This is the job of an MFI. I can check as much as possible, but again, if they want me to bring to a fancy, happy client, they can. So I have a problem in making sure that this point is strictly enforced. But overall, what's the point I'm trying to make? The point is, if we are not satisfied with what we see on the ground, if we are not satisfied with staff collection procedures, with the over-indebtedness of the sector of that MFI, with how they treat their clients, we will not extend financing to these institutions. An interesting development that we have, I'd like to touch base on, is with the Cambodian CMI. CMI is Cambodian Microfinance Association, together with all the major microfinance investment vehicles. We have written a letter to the president of the CMA. We've written a letter to the National Bank of Cambodia, which is the MBC, the central bank. We've written to the IFC, and now we have established a lender group, making sure that CMA, together with the central bank and IFC, are going to establish a credit bureau in the country, which at the moment it's not functioning and it's not up and running. So that's a positive example of synergies between investors and stakeholders on the ground in order to make the sector healthy and more transparent. Obviously, as a boring example, as an investor, we do have country limits by region, by country, and basically we do have exposure limits that we need to check and we need to make sure we comply with. But I guess that's not very exciting for you. Overall, Blue Orchard is committed to financial strength. We've been signatory of the Clients Protection Principle since a couple of years, I would think. I'm not saying we are the best. We actually need to learn a lot. We can do more. We're open to criticism. We're open to ideas on how we can strengthen our process and make sure our due diligence